In 17th century, after long war of independence, Dutch finally defeated Spanish occupier. After their glorious victory, the United Provinces of Netherlands entered a time period known as the Golden Age. In that time, the Dutch state became economically and socially the most advanced European region. In climate like this, science, especially medicine, made marvelous breakthroughs. Dutch doctors completely isolated themselves from the rest of European alchemy-based medicine. Golden times introduced many golden people. One of them was Herman Boerhaave, who introduced new revolutionary practice. Medical students were taught how to treat patients from the earliest stages of their education, rather than seeing first patient after finishing university. Practice nowadays normal, but in Boerhaave's time it was truly revolutionary reform. So much so that later he was called the father of clinical teaching. In such climate, one man arose above everyone else. His name was Gerard van Swieten. Born in 1700, his childhood was extremely rough. He lost both of his parents very young. With only 12, he became an orphan. Luckily, friends of his father adopted him. An outstanding student at Leiden University, van Swieten quickly attracted a lot of attention. Unfortunately, he was never allowed to become professor of the university, due to his Catholic background in Protestant-dominated Netherlands. However, he was allowed to open his private medical practice. Van Swieten's constant hunger for knowledge, pragmatic nature, which put scientific evidence above everything else, and the fact he was taught by the greatest teachers of the time made him one of the most famous doctors throughout Europe. But Van Swieten wasn't only successful in field of medicine. He was very triumphant in private life as well. He and his wife Marie had 6 children. One of them, Gottfried van Swieten, would later become a key figure of Austrian diplomacy. Due to his fame, Habsburg Empress Maria Theresa invited him to become her personal physician. Van Swieten refused at first, but later accepted the call. Habsburg monarchy at the time was far behind in almost every aspect than the land he left. Thankfully, the Empress was one of the leaders of new movement which sparked throughout Europe, the Enlightened Absolutists, title carried by European leaders who wanted to turn Europe from its dark medieval times to a brighter future through education. She gave van Swieten nearly limitless power in field of science. In order to reform the monarchy from its backwards ways, he had to face many enemies. The first ones were Jesuits, or members of School of Jesus. They held keys of the Imperial Library, the largest library in the empire, which meant they held keys to knowledge. Knowledge they protected so dearly from common folk. With Empress's help, Gerard took control over library, stopped book censorship, and allowed education to finally spread its wings fully in monarchy. Van Swieten demanded books to be published based on scientific discoveries, not superstition and primitive alchemy. He also forbade public burning of books. By doing all of this, Austrian science advanced greatly. His next great feat was establishing first modern clinic in Vienna, based on the same methods his professor implemented many years ago, in which medical students proactively participated in treatment of patients. Van Swieten represented change, a light of hope in darkness built of ignorance. The change he represented best came to fruition when from newly Habsburg-occupied northern Serbia came stories of vampires. People rising from graves, once dead, now are coming back to life again. The stories were so realistic that they spread all over empire, and doctors started to search scientific explanations for their existence. Nobility and ordinary folk alike were frightened. Was this the devil himself who came to sow doom upon humanity? When reports of strong vampire activity in Moravia came to Habsburg court, Empress sent van Swieten to investigate. He viewed vampires as barbarians of medieval primitivism, and departed with one goal in mind: to eradicate them completely. Once in Moravia, he carefully investigated all the graveyards where vampires were seen. A madman was a title local people bestowed upon him. A man who wished death, for he was provoking the devil himself. But he was neither of those things. Gerard van Swieten was man of science, while vampires were product of uneducated masses. When he finally opened the grave where vampire was hiding and saw the majestic beast, he smirked, for there were no vampire, but a man, a dead man, with all signs of death he has seen so many times before. Main feature of all vampire stories were their almost intact dead bodies. 20 years before discovery of oxygen, Van Swieten concluded that such phenomena only happened when bodies were buried under strong air exclusion, which slowed down the usual process of decay. He published his discovery in a book called Treatise on the Existence of Wraiths, where he ironically stated, "All that noise came from nothing else than vain fear, a superstitious gullibility, a dark and agitated fantasy." After his discoveries, the practice of digging out human corpses and beheading them in order to stop vampire threat was banned across monarchy. The dead could finally rest in peace. As for Van Swieten, the first and last vampire hunter, he lived the rest of his days in Austria, further advancing Vienna School of Medicine. Due to his brilliance, he was accepted in royal societies across Europe and became Baron, a title granted by Empresses herself. Van Swieten may died in 1772, but his enormous contribution to the world of medicine made him immortal, just like vampire. Van Helsing, the famous vanquisher of evil, was inspired by him, and while Van Swieten didn't vanquish evil so directly, like his fictional friend, he fought ignorance, which might be the greatest evil of all.